And I did some blog writing about leadership lessons from Lewis and Clark. The company out of Denver read one of my blog posts and reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to help build a leadership development program, experiential learning, based on the story of Lewis and Clark? It has been one of the most incredible things of my career.
If you're ready to unlock momentum, you're in the right place. I'm Aaron Kopel, the Momentum Locksmith, and this is where CIOs come to grow. Here with Jeff Ton. Very excited to have Jeff on the show. Jeff and I have known each other for probably 25 years, something like that, off and on. And so we used to work together way long ago, but have kept in touch, and Jeff's done a lot of great things over the years for IT and tech in Indiana and beyond. And really excited to have Jeff on as a guest and get to learn more about what's going on with him and some of his perspectives on things.
First of all, thank you for having me on the show, Aaron. I was so excited when I got your email that you were starting this show, and I couldn't wait to respond back and jump on the show.
Well, as we jump into the next part of our conversation, as we think about unlocking momentum, name of the podcast, of course, but a lot of what I do in day-to-day life. And we sort of break things down into different categories of products, teams, and leaders. And I'm kind of curious to hear an example from you about a time when you've been stuck and sort of how you broke through, and what did that look like, and help us sort of understand some of the specifics there.
Well, it's one of the things I love about your book and about this podcast, Aaron, because so many times as tech leaders, we do get stuck. We get stuck in the day-to-day, the keeping the lights on. And so the story that comes to mind for me is I was Chief Information Officer for Goodwill. And we had all these dreams and plans of all these things we wanted to do to make Goodwill a better organization through technology. And we were faced with yet another Microsoft Exchange upgrade, right? It's just like, it just sucks the life out of you to have to spend resources and time and energy for email. I know email is important, but for email. And sometimes as a leader, we need somebody else to kind of smack us in the head a little bit with an idea. And so I was attending the CIO conference at MIT, which is if you're listening out there and you're a CIO, it's the best one-day conference ever for CIOs. It's fabulous. Anyway, I was attending that, and the speaker up on stage says, well, there's only two types of IT projects. There's AC projects and there's CF. And we've all been part of CF projects, and of course, the crowd kind of laughs because you know what the euphemism is for CF. He says, no, that's not what I'm talking about. It's a grading scale. There are some projects that you and your team can do that if you hit a grand slam, walk off the field, home run, the best grade the business is ever going to give you is a C. There are other projects, however, that when you hit that grand slam, you're going to get an A or an A+. Why on earth would you want your team working on those CF projects? So I tell you, I was one of those bosses there, and I gathered my team together on the plane on the way home, and we worked on the plane. We got out our project portfolio, and we started assigning a grade to each project that was on our list. And for those that fell in the C, D, or F category, it was, is there a better way of doing this? Do we have to do this at all? If we do, is IT the right team to be doing it, or did it just kind of land in our laps? In other words, what can we do to get that list smaller and smaller and smaller? For us, going back to the Microsoft Exchange, it was Roommate Cloud email. Now, I know that was 15, 16 years ago. It's not so cool anymore, but it was fairly cutting edge back in 2010. It was just starting to catch on. And for us, it was like, can you imagine never having to upgrade a server for Exchange again? It's just mind-blowing that you didn't have to do that work. It just completely eliminated it. That's what got us unstuck. And when you look back on the things that we then achieved in those 5 or 6 years at Goodwill, it really set the foundation for that organization to continue to grow, expand their offerings, and be a huge asset in the community.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, one of the things we talk about, one of those categories for us is that product category, which is all about prioritization, forming value streams, really focusing on the things that matter. That's a great example of trying to trim off the things that either don't make sense to even do at all, or the ones that do, let's find the right people to do them or the right technology to take care of it for us. And, frees up your time to really do the things that your team is best at, that are highest value to the business, and really focus there. And that's a huge win, right?
It really changed the course of the department, and I'd like to think the course of the company as well.
Yeah, that's a great example. And anything you can do to get those kind of things out of the way, where you can focus on the more important things, because there's more important things, and then something else will occur that's even more important than that. And if you piled on all that stuff that you shouldn't be doing in the first place, you just get buried and you can't even see those new things that you should be doing. So it's nice to clear that up, really get clear focus. And, I imagine that what I see from a lot of places when they do that kind of thing is they get a much better relationship with their business partners as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So they feel like they're being paid attention to, that they're getting what they need more timely, and especially, like I said, the ability to adapt to change when they come up with something next week that's more important, right?
A few years after that, Kent Kramer, who is now the CEO of Goodwill here in Central Indiana, Kent and I did a co-presentation, and he presented the technology side of it, and I presented the business side of it. And we talked about the impacts of each. It was a really cool way of telling the stories.
That's really good. I mean, yeah, it's such oftentimes there's such friction, in that relationship. And so it sounds like you guys really did that well. So
yeah. Kent and I had a great relationship. Still do.
That's fantastic. Great example. All right. With that, transitioning, some of the friction kind of things we get into in this show, getting into some things like hot takes or sort of a controversial topic. And so think about those kind of things in the IT world, tech world. Jeff, share with us what's on your mind in terms of, controversy, hot take kind of things that you see out there right now.
I think, and probably a lot of your guests have said this, it's the topic of every conversation you get into with tech leaders today, and that's AI. I was just talking with my son over the Thanksgiving holiday, and he was talking about a product that he's worked with that doesn't have AI in it. And it's like, well, why? It should have AI in it, right? And it's like, well, does it need it? Does it have to be there? What's the business driver behind that? And I think what happens a lot in tech is what's old again is new, and what's new again is old. AI is just the latest in a lot of different innovations over the years. And we forget, when we're looking at this new technology, we forget about what's the business trying to achieve. What are you trying to do? Is AI the right answer to solve that problem? Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't need to be there. And it's more about what can you do to transform the business as a technologist, using your technology knowledge and expertise and experience. How can you push the business forward? And I think that may not be very controversial, but it is something that we talk about all the time. We've been talking about it I've been in tech for 45 years. We've been talking about it for 45 years, and we probably talked about it for a couple of decades before that.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes back to just that fundamental, it's all about people kind of concept. And, we often get stuck in the new wave of technology. There's been big ones, right? Like you said, the move to cloud and internet and things like that. Those are big technology waves, but it always settles down and comes back to people and what are you going to do with it and how are you going to solve business problems and customer problems, things like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's, and it's, right now it's huge. Obviously, we're thinking about AI for everything, but it's really ends up being a tool or one piece of a larger solution that we have to sort out. It's not solving everything automatically for us, but it's still got to have human interpretation, making sense, making sure it's being accurate and not hallucinating and all that kind of stuff. And we gotta keep saying it's going to get better and better, and it is, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to solve everything. So
just look at how much it's improved since it exploded. Was that January of 23, December of 22, maybe even a year before that, when ChatGPT kind of took the world by storm. And the improvements in it since then have been incredible, and it will continue to get better and better. I mean, I use it every day, but it doesn't solve every problem.
Right. Yep. Yeah. It still does come back to people. And It is interesting. We actually did, for us at Project Brilliant, we did a custom AI workshop probably 2-3 months ago now. We were using it every day, using ChatGPT and helping us, think through problems and things like that. But we went through this workshop and it was amazing. Like we were just we didn't realize it, but we were still in the box, right? We were thinking outside the box in some things and went through that and sort of challenged ourselves to think about some other things we could do. We're like, oh, well, of course we should do that with it, right? But it was really eye-opening to sit down, just take a step back from all the day-to-day and all the client work and just really think about the opportunities with it. And so I started creating custom GPTs for some of the stuff that we're thinking about internally for my book, for us to start thinking through, like, some of the knowledge is already in there. Let's have AI take advantage of all that stuff and start providing us some starting points for answers and other tools and things that we've now started to implement. So it's been really great. But back to your point, it's still all about people. We had to get our team together to go think about how our team is going to use it and how our team is going to use it with clients and how we're going to use it internally. And so it always does come back to that human component.
It does.
Yeah. And I can imagine a lot of organizations are still early on in that. A lot of our clients are wanting to get into it, but held back by things like risk management, regulations, worries about that kind of stuff. Kind of curious if you have any thoughts there too.
I think what I saw, especially early on, and we're still kind of stuck in this a little bit, is you've got, as usual with technology, you've got the early adopters, those that are kind of out pushing the bleeding edge of it. And then you've got others that says, nope, we're not going to use it. We're not going to use it at all. We're going to shut it down and not use it. I think either side has dangers. And I've always been one that the stick your head in the sand and don't use it is probably the bigger danger, because you're going to lose some competitive advantage at some point because your competitors are using it. So why not figure out how you can use it safely? I'm not saying take all the guardrails off. I'm talking about how do you use it safely, protect your IP, protect your customers' IP, and make sure that you're getting the right answers out of this thing and see where you can apply it that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tricky thing trying to find that balance. I talk to a lot of CIOs who are in that conversation right now, trying to figure out how far to go and how far is the business willing to let them go, that kind of thing. But it's also funny, like, starting to shift the role of the CIO where it's not just the IT department thinking about that. It's the business really, they have the opportunity to go do it themselves. And so the IT organizations has to start to become the police on that to some degree in a lot of places. And I'm not sure, it's kind of like, sending the military in to be the police. They're trained for one thing. That's maybe they can do that a little bit, but it's not their forte. Like the IT department going out there and being the risk management police is not their typical situation.
That's right. Yeah. But you want to protect the company, but it goes back to, when cloud first came out, right? No, you cannot save a file out on the cloud. We're not going to let you to do that. People were doing it. You just didn't know they were doing it. They were going around you to get their work done. Now they're doing the same thing with AI. If you say you can't use it, they're using it.
They'll find a way.
Yeah.
So it seems like the right thing to do, instead of going out there and trying to be the police and lock everything down, is to partner with them and help them figure out how to use it in a good way that they don't hurt themselves or the company, but still can start to learn, experiment, and try some things, try to discover where the guide rails ought to be. So
that's right. Yeah.
That's good. Well, it's getting towards the end here, but I want to hit a couple more topics with you, building on some of the things we already talked about, which is, as you said, your background growing up in technology, but really coming into that leadership role and advancing that. I'd love to hear more about some leadership work you do. There's some exciting things that you do, as well as some books you've written. So, tell us a bit about that.
Well, I first started writing. I started writing a blog back in, 2008, maybe even a little bit before that. I fell in love with writing, and then I married that with this passion that I had for building leaders. So I've written a lot about leadership. My first book, Amplify Your Value, Leading IT with Strategic Vision, echoes a lot of the same things that you talk about in your book, Aaron. It's looking for the strategic. It's looking for what's the most value that you're going to add, how to grow people, always important. The second book I wrote was Amplify Your Job Search. It was right in the heart of the pandemic. There were a lot of people out of work, a lot of people looking for jobs, and that's not a skill we're taught how to do. So I took 20 years of conversation and coaching and being coached myself, and put those into a book to help the job seeker. And that work has continued to grow. I left the corporate world in 2020, because who wouldn't launch their own company at the launch of a pandemic? But it was all about leadership, right? I thought when I started my company, it was going to be virtual CIO services, fractional CIO services. And it ended up being more leadership development, helping IT leaders build their teams, help them help their teams grow, those types of things. The one that went off kind of on not really a tangent when you know me, but I have been a Lewis and Clark buff for 25, 26 years now. And I did some blog writing about leadership lessons from Lewis and Clark. Lo and behold, a company out of Denver read one of my blog posts and reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to help build a leadership development program, experiential learning, based on the story of Lewis and Clark? It's like, that sounds fun. Aaron, it has been one of the most incredible things of my career. There were 4 of us that wrote this program, and myself and one other guy have been the lead facilitators. We call ourselves guides because we're going on an expedition. And we bring leaders from all over the country, leaders and upcoming leaders. We bring them to a lodge out in eastern Washington State, right on the Columbia River. Beautiful views. You're right in the footsteps of where Lewis and Clark walked. And we spend 3 days really tearing apart their leadership and putting it back together in a new way, helping them change, helping them take a new way forward in their leadership. We've taken, 250 people through it over the last several years. Rave reviews every time from the surveys that get filled out at the end. That has been so impactful for me. I learned something every time I guide a group through that process. We're always tweaking it, always making it better, bringing in the insights of the people that took the course and adding that to the content. And then my current project is I'm writing another book. It's a book that has been 20 plus years in the making. During the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition, which was 2003 to 2006, my wife Carmen and I traveled the entire Lewis and Clark Trail, from Monticello, Virginia to Astoria, Oregon, and back to St. Louis. Every long weekend, every vacation found us out there on that trail. And I've always wanted to write about those stories, but I was missing what the real story arc was in the book. And was sitting in a doctor's appointment, waiting in the waiting room, and it dawned on me that the story is us. The story is Carmen and I, our love story. It's her. We were newlyweds when we started on that adventure in 2003. We'd just gotten married in the end of 2001. And so this book, Uncharted Moments, Love, Legacy, and the Lewis and Clark Trail, winds that story arc through of our relationship and what we learned while we were on those trips. And we learned a deep, deep love for our country, despite its flaws. We learned a deep, deep love for the land on which we were traveling and the indigenous peoples whose land we were traveling through, and a deep, deep love for each other. And that forms the foundation for that book. And it'll be out in 2026.
That's fantastic. That's coming up fast.
It is like very fast.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's great. I mean, it's obviously a passion of yours, the Lewis and Clark part of it, and leadership, and obviously Carmen, your wife as well. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Bringing it all together. So that's really great. And I was going to come back and ask you a question about the leadership side of that. As you do that immersive experience. I mean, I love that stuff. That's, a lot of what our classes are about is really getting immersed in whatever the topic is, the problem space or things like that. And when it's leadership, especially getting out of an office or conference room is really helpful, right? To just start thinking differently. I'm kind of curious. You said when you go through that process, you're sort of like dissecting or taking apart their leadership and then rebuilding it. What do you see as like a common, as they come in, like some common patterns or misadventures they've had in leadership that you need to take apart to help them see differently?
I think We use 5 key elements of leadership in the program. It's vision, team building, overcoming obstacles, developing resilience, and proceeding on in the face of burnout and distraction. And I see in a lot of those, in a lot of the students that come in, they haven't really thought about vision before. If they have, it's something out there, right? It's the mission statement for the company on the wall, not what it means to them, right? And we drive down in that vision module to what are your core values? What are your 5 core values? And how does that relate to the vision? And then the question that's the kicker, does your team know how your values relate to that vision? Because we always ask them, you get behind the mission, get behind the vision. If they don't know why you're behind it, they're not going to be able to try to articulate where they fit into it. That's one of the biggest takeaways. The other thing that we weave through this is this metaphor of a river for your leadership. There's lots of metaphors out there relating a river to your life and things like that. This is specifically your leadership. And we take them through a visualization where you're walking into the river and you're feeling the current pushing on you and you can see the rocks and all that. And then we step them up on the banks and then we step them up on the vista. We tie it to the leadership because your team is in the river all day, every day. They are fighting that current. They are navigating around the rocks. They're trying to get through the rapids. Are you in the river with them? Are you on the banks where you can see a little bit of the way ahead, where you're scouting the way around the rapids? Are you up on the vista where you can see the entire valley? The art of leadership is you have to be in each of those 3 places at different times, and you have to know when you need to be where. So the question we leave them with that is, where are you today? And is that where your team needs you most? And we get a lot of, hey, I'm up on the vista, right? Because that's my job. And you know what? When you're up on the vista, you can't see the obstacles. You can't see the rocks in the river. Conversely, and one of the things that I learned from one of the participants in a comment that they made is when you're down in the river, you can't see the obstacles that the people up on the vista are facing. Right? And so it's incumbent on us as leaders to talk about those obstacles that are up here so that we're helping the team understand what we're all facing. So those are just a few of the nuggets that we take out of it.
Well, that's fantastic. It's a lot about perspective and communication. And, I can remember, I can think of, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of like 10 examples in my past career, either as an employee or as a consultant that I've seen, trying to balance those things. Like, how much are you down in the river versus, on the bank versus the vista? And I find a lot of IT leaders that I've worked with have real trouble getting up to the vista for real. They want to be up there and pretend they're up there sometimes, but they're really way down here, have a very tough time getting their foot out of the water completely. They're trying to get up on the bank, but really stuck in that technology problem-solving world.
We find that a lot, that they get stuck. And their team wants them in there, right? Their team's going to pull you in. So it's this tension that you have to dance.
Yeah, that's a really good example. I can imagine like the immersion into that really sinks in and helps them understand that. So that's a beautiful thing.
We use a great hike to teach that. We go down we're on the shoreline of the Columbia River. You can dip your hand in the Columbia River and feel that. And then we take a hike 900 feet up to the top of Beacon Rock, and you get this commanding view of the Columbia River Valley. And it really just brings that to life.
That sounds amazing. Well, that's great. I love that you get to, live that passion, both sides of it, like the leadership development and the Lewis and Clark and the history. And like I said, love of country and everything. That sounds amazing. Yeah.
It's a great program.
Yeah, really beautiful. So with that, I'm going to ask Jeff to sort of help us understand who he is. So Jeff.
So just a little bit about me. I've been in information technology for back to the dark ages. We were talking before we went live about COBOL. I go way back to COBOL and punch cards. But I tell you, the career progression that I have really started out as a programmer, and I like to say I got drugged kicking and screaming into the world of leadership and management. I did not want to do that. I did not want to play the political games, and really finally decided that I would do it, and found out I was good at leading people and coaching people and helping them to grow. And every step along the way of my career from that point was to be in larger and larger leadership positions that could create bigger and bigger impact. Ended up being chief information officer for a couple of organizations before I joked and I said I went to the dark side and became a vendor. Joined Blue Lock at their executive level and spent a few years there. And then the last part of my career, this last, I'd say 5 or 6 years, has been focused on leadership development, not necessarily always in the tech space, but predominantly there because that's my background in helping to grow that next generation of leaders. And that's what I've focused on now along with my writing.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you've done a lot of things over the years, but a lot of it comes back to that tech background, but building on top of that, right? So
yes, exactly.
You said in product management as well as leadership, and that's a huge part of it, right? It's all, even though we're in tech, it's all about people still. So
it is. Yeah. I always say that, the tech jobs would be easy if it weren't for the people.
Right. Yeah. Those people, that's a tricky problem to solve, right?
Yeah.
Well, kind of curious with that, another question for you is, as you look back on that great career and a lot of things you've done, what advice might you give your past self or your younger self as you look back at that journey?
I actually wrote a blog post a couple of years ago, what I would say to my 17-year-old self. Because when I was 17, the only thing I ever wanted to do was be a rock star. I wrote music, I played guitar, it's all I ever wanted to do. And then I found out through some hard knocks that you have to have talent, and I did not. So the advice that I would give that 17-year-old self was to put down the guitar and pick up the keyboard. It started a little bit sooner. It took me a while to catch on to that whole computer thing back then. And I could have really gotten a jump start, I think, if I just set the guitar aside and focused on the computer.
Yeah, I understand. I hear a lot of those really successful, especially tech entrepreneurs and things, they started programming and all that kind of stuff way early in their career. But
yeah.
I also find, a lot of people that I've known that were musicians got into tech and very successful. Apparently, like a lot of the same thinking and patterns and brainwaves and that kind of stuff in music are similar in code, apparently. So
you think about tech and you don't think necessarily about creativity. And music and the arts is all about creation, but so is tech. You're creating programs, you're creating products, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, tons of parallels. That's great. Yeah, and it makes us feel better when we think about like just being a techie nerd, but you're really creative, right? It's not just about the ones and zeros. It is about creativity and problem solving and interpreting business needs and things like that. So it's really is a creative endeavor, right? A lot of complexity in there, a lot of opportunities to be creative. So it's good. Jeff, we usually wrap things up with some rapid fire questions. So I got a few questions for you if you're ready. First one is, what's your biggest passion outside of work?
Oh, wow. It's these days it's grandkids. We're surrounded by them. We've got 9 and they all live fairly close. So we spend a lot of time with grandkids. And right outside my office, there's a huge mini hoop basketball court that we have set up in our rec room. So we play a lot of mini hoops with the grandkids.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's got to be a lot of fun for you.
It is.
Excellent.
It is. They're a great bunch.
Nice. All right. Well, our second rapid fire question is, if you could have a coffee and a chat with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why?
I am a huge Rolling Stones fan. So I would say Keith Richards. He's just an amazing dude, a great backstory. First of all, even having coffee with him, you can't understand a word he says, but it would be fun just to hang out and do that. After reading his autobiography a couple of years ago, I just think it'd be a great conversation.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's funny. So a lot of our guests have gone with musicians in that question.
Is that right?
So it's an interesting one. Yeah, for me, it's similar. I might go with like Eddie Vedder. I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. So
yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, last rapid fire question, and not to be too down, but what do you want to be remembered for? What's that saying on your tombstone that you want to see?
I was trying to come up with something real pithy for it. I just wanted to be remembered as somebody that cared about people, did what I could to help people in their careers throughout my own career, coaching people, helping them grow, helping them to obtain the things that were important to them. That's why too long to put on a tombstone, but
Well, that's a good one. And I think that people will remember you a lot for that, for sure, knowing you. So Yeah, a lot of caring and really care for others and helping out. So that's fantastic. And it doesn't surprise me at all. So that's great. We've covered a lot. COBOL to leadership and communication to love stories. It's been a great conversation, Jeff. For those that are listening, just as we get to wrapping up here, what's a good way to connect with you? If they want to learn more or send you a note, what's a good way to connect?
JeffreySTon.com. Pretty easy. It's my website, and there's a place you can sign up for my newsletters if you want some stories of life and living to show up in your mailbox every couple of weeks. Sign up for the newsletter, shoot me a note. There's a contact form on there. Of course, I'm always on LinkedIn as well, so you can find me there. So
that's great. Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate you being on the show, and it's a great conversation. I think there's a lot of good nuggets in there for people to take away, and hopefully things to start some conversations at their teams with their leaders and their business partners as well, as we talked about. So with that, thanks so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. We had a really good chat, and wish you all the best and hope to talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you very much again, Aaron, for having me on the show.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for tuning in to Unlocking Momentum. If today's conversation sparked ideas or gave you a new way to think about leadership, check out our past episodes and resources. Don't forget to follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to connect with me, Aaron Kopel, the Momentum Locksmith, you'll find the link in the show notes.